everyone. I am so excited because I was gonna, I usually start these off with, I'm gonna talk to author Gemma Liviero, but I'm not, okay? Gemma and I have tried all week to make this video happen and we couldn't connect. She's in Australia. Her internet wasn't working right. I don't know, but we gave up and we came up with a plan, okay? I sent her some questions and then she's going to answer them. But let me just tell you a little bit about what I wanted to say to her. And then I'm going to I think she's got 6 parts. I'll talk in between. We're going to make this work somehow, okay? Because you know why? Because this book is that good. Because it's worth it, okay? The Road Beyond Ruin, you are seeing it right up there. It came out January 1st. It's 436 pages. It's a historical fiction thriller. It is amazing. When I started off this book, and then I'm going to play one of Gemma's clips, okay? But I just want to tell you that I was like reading, reading it, and I'm like, wow, this is a really good book. This is amazing, right? I get halfway through and I'm like, Gemma, this is a great book. Like, this isn't just a good book that I would be like happy about to sit on a Saturday afternoon and read. No, this is an amazingly good book. This is great. This is on another level. And never mind that I love historical fiction, because that's what you're saying. You're saying, but you love historical fiction. I do. Okay, but even if I didn't, I'm telling you, she wove it into a thriller, and she's going to talk about it because it was one of the questions I asked her. But let's just start off so that this doesn't last for, too long. I'm going to let her talk now, and then I'm going to talk, and then I'm going to let her talk, and we're going to make this fun, okay? And who knows, I might get to do this more often. It's kind of convenient for the authors because they can do it on their own time. So everybody, here is Gemma.
Hi Michelle, thank you very much for including me in your video cast and featuring my latest book. How did I come up with the story is your first question. I wanted to write something that I hadn't read much about in historical fiction before. I've said before that often my ideas come from just sort of feeling a connection to a place and a time that I've read about, and I want to delve deeper and know as much as I can about that particular period or place, quite simply. But I particularly wanted to write about Germany again, and as well as Italy, because my husband's grandfather actually walked home from a prisoner of war camp, but very few details are known about him. So I've certainly been thinking about this idea for a number of years. And I think it's really interesting because when we think of the war ending in Europe initially, we visualise celebrations in the street after Germany surrendered, of those famous images recorded, and the idea that people could just simply return to a normal way of life. But in Germany and other places across Europe, this was a very different thing, and I've read many accounts of that chaotic period as people attempted long journeys home. They were ill, they were exhausted, sometimes they just had the clothes on their back, nothing else. They didn't know where their family members were, if they were even alive, and there was revenge, looting, starvation, rapes, border disputes. And I had written a little bit about displacement in my previous novel, and I did want to explore this further. And then, as well as all that going on, the Allied powers, when they were deciding the territories, so for example, moving some of the Poland that had been annexed by Germany or USSR, beginning of the war, were then ceded, and then people were forced to move. So, and often it was rather a hostile reception when they returned to other places. So there was a lot of things there to actually write about. In Italy, the partisans, that was sort of really interesting towards the end of end of war, when they rose up against in the last years of wars, they rose up against the Italian fascist puppet government and and Germany, who had occupied the northern region. I was interested to know what happened afterwards, and some of those partisans for a number of years were still searching for those people who supported the German occupation, and and many times, many more people were executed as a result. So there was a lot going on, and so the war in Europe may have ended when Germany surrendered, but for many it wasn't over, and which is at the heart really of what I've written about.
Gemma, that was awesome. That is one of the things I loved about this book, was that you really made us feel like we were in post-war Germany. Just the feel of the families. Like, that was one of the things that I really, really loved, was that you explored what was going on with family separations, families that were not agreeing during the war, and what they had to do after the war. But I love that so much, and you look beautiful. I really wish we could have chatted, but this is going really good. So here we go. Next question for Gemma.
How did I make this historical fiction read like a thriller? Well, it was definitely my intent to write across these genres, historical fiction and thriller and suspense, and it was certainly a deviation from the types of books I'd written before. When I was, again, exploring this book, I was wondering how people would feel or how they would present themselves, and how they would present themselves when they met their former enemies, and what would they do, what would they say? Would they still feel hatred, or was there now acceptance? So the idea of Stefano coming across Germans was, would he make peace with them, and would they hide things about themselves? And then I thought of the idea that I would release little pieces of information slowly, pieces of a giant puzzle about their backgrounds. And I also thought the back and forth device would create some suspense.
Gemma, you did that so well. That suspense just kept building and building. And when I went back and I read the first part again, I was like, I wanted to see what you did there. And it was brilliant, of course. But with Stefano, like, oh my God, I loved him so much. And there were so many layers to him. And you're like, he's supposed to be there. He's not supposed to be there. You had me going the whole time. So all I can do is applaud you. I loved that part about the book.
Beginning with Eric, I thought was a good idea because I wanted to show a family sort of trying to come back to some sort of normality and start off with that scene, but also show that there was a much larger story afoot. Was he good or was he bad? And how safe were Germans? That was sort of my message there. And I wanted to show that it would have been incredibly difficult for German families, the fear they would have felt knowing that their enemies were now in charge and right outside their door at times.
That was one of the questions that I couldn't wait to ask you, was like, why Eric? Why did you start the book off? Because you could have started off with Stefano, but you started off with Eric, and the way, to show Eric's family. And then of course we get to know Eric. You started off in May of 1945, and then we get to know Eric in a really different way later. And so I love that, and I loved going back and reading that part again too. I loved going back to the beginning and being like, oh, I forgot you started with Eric. So I love that.
Were the timelines difficult to manage? Yes, they were. They were hard. It was an intense experience, I've got to say. I've been planning for some time to come up with a story that, as I said, that would incorporate this time period. Uh, Going back and forth added a degree of difficulty to the whole story, and I had to be very careful of the historical timeline for each of the characters' personal past accounts, and then trying to piece the present as I went along, in sometimes incorporating the past accounts to tie in or enhance the current happenings. I certainly took a big deviation from my usual style, that was for sure. It was complex and layered, and I wanted to give the reader a different experience.
And not only were you doing that on timelines, but you were going between Eric, Stefano, Rosalind, and to keep those those characters and then the timelines. And I just thought you did that so well because I was never confused. A lot of times when authors try to tackle that and it just gets all jumbled up and you're like, I don't even know where I am. Well, with yours it worked with that suspense. Okay, your timelines and then switching the characters up timeline wise, to me that just kept building it and building it. So you did such an amazing job with that.
I think writing about this period for so long, I've accumulated a lot of stories about broken families. Um, Again, after the war, the tracing agency of the Red Cross had to track down thousands of people, and most times unsuccessfully. And in the last book, when I was researching the Lebensborn project, that led me to the stories about children who were taken from their parents and parents that were sent to camps or completely forgotten about. And then there was the statistics, the sheer amount of soldiers killed to show, just how broken these families were. And information from the Holocaust Memorial Online and visiting other museums, the statistical data on the sheer numbers lost across Europe, and of course memoirs from Holocaust survivors give us a window into that loss and the experiences, and their stories are very important to keep and honour and talk about.
So agree with you. I think this story was so important. Like I said, we didn't hear, there's so much we heard about what was going on during the war, but this story talking about after the war, there were times after each one of your chapters when I would just sit there and like I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And that's what I love about historical fiction writers is that they do present these stories and in history that we would not otherwise know from a history book. It's stories we didn't get told. And your research was spot on. I mean, I learned so much and I kept saying that like while I'm reading it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Gemma, what kind of research did this take you? It must have taken you forever." And isn't that why we love it? I think it is. So, I just want you to know that we always appreciate all the research that you put into your books.
As a final thing, I want to say that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to present the book. It gave me an opportunity to learn some things and expand my understanding, and I hope that readers will like both the historical elements as well as the fictional ones, and like characters also. Thank you.
So much, Gemma. I am so grateful that you agreed to do this. I mean, you could have just been like, forget it, we're not doing anything. But this was so nice of you, and I learned more. Like just hearing you talk about it was just amazing. So thank you. And the one question I didn't ask you was like, next. what's next. But please tell me. I will be an early reader. I will read anything you write. I'm going to put all of Gemma's links listed below, especially the one that goes right to this book on Amazon. And thank you for taking the time, and thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this, please hit like. Please let me know, because who knows, we may be doing more of these. I enjoy doing it. It's better than not talking to them at all. Like, I would much rather do this. So thank you, Gemma. Thank you, everyone.